Welcome to Spiritual Dialogues with Father Unon de Castro. We are here at Cariana Lay Monastic Community. I'm your host, Brother Lodi, and with us is Sister Tachi. Sister?
Yes, Father. Well, what's the new topic we have for this episode, Father?
We will try to continue to discuss the confusion that is going on in the Catholic Church, and we would like to emphasize that we are not trying to settle the confusion in other sphere, like the confusion in politics or confusion in foreign relations and so on, or even the confusion in the epidemic going on in Los Angeles. We are not sure whether it's typhus or what. We are concentrating on trying to clarify the confusion only in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
And it is a practice always in the Catholic Church that we make certain of what we believe, the truths that we believe. We have to be certain. And the definition of the word Catholic faith includes the point that it has an element of certainty. So when a Catholic says that he believes something, there's no doubt about it, that there is a great certainty that what he believes is true. More on the basis that it was taught by God, and God cannot commit a mistake or cannot be fooled or be fooled by anyone. So we're concentrating on Catholic truths. And whenever there is a confusion, then we try to clarify it, basing it on the sources of Catholic truth, which is the scriptures and the fathers of the church, commonly referred to as tradition. Those are our basis for correcting. So we are not correcting any Catholic doctrine because it goes against what we feel or what we believe in. It is the fact that we base it on the teachings of the Catholic Church as taken from scriptures and tradition.
And interpreted by the fathers of the church.
Yeah, that's tradition. That's a part of
I
tradition.
see.
So scriptures and the fathers who interpret the sacred scriptures. And the latest source of confusion, as we have seen in our last program, is the document that came out first by Archbishop Bigano, then later on by Monsignor Bax, who is a consultant of the Vatican offices, congregation. He's a consultant of the Congregation for the Canonization of Saints. Though it seems he's not a bishop, but he's one of the consultors, which means he's a person of importance. And they came up with a statement that there is a doubt, in other words, they're raising a doubt, that the election of Pope Francis is invalid. So they're questioning the election of Pope Francis as a pope. Now, when you hear something like that, you don't believe it right away. You should not believe it right away.
Yes, Father.
Like, for instance, the big scandal going on in the United States. It's all in the newspaper. And so many people are involved in it, even the federal authority and so on, the courts, detectives, and policemen and so on, and newspapers. Everybody's saying the same thing. But just because we heard something like that happening in the state doesn't mean that it's true and we shouldn't believe it.
Yes.
That's the rule in the Catholic Church. We don't believe anything unless there is certain proof that it could be true
Yes.
in some degree.
In other words, Father, the decision of the majority doesn't hold.
No, we're not
Okay.
democratic.
Yes, isn't that
The Catholic Church is never.
okay. Okay, Father.
So even if the whole world says so,
Yes, if it
we
is
don't
against
believe
him.
it. So on what shall we base our decisions? When we hear something, we have to base it first on philosophy, metaphysics, ontology, and so on. whether the person who is saying something follows the proper rules of reasoning. That's philosophy.
Okay. Yeah.
Whether his reasoning is correct, it is logical. But that's the natural sphere only. And then we check it in the supernatural level, basing it on divine revelation. Whether it is in accordance to divine revelation or against divine revelation. So this news came out, and it is in the form of a document. So you can read it. Anybody can read it. You can sit down, read it, study it, make a research about it, and so on like that. And it was raising a doubt that the election of Pope Francis is invalid. So it's a doubt. It's a doubt whether he's Pope or not. Now, as a priest, I had been under many popes, like we mentioned before, from Pope Pius XII up to Pope Benedict XVI.
Yes, Father.
And I have read so many articles, usually from Protestants, proving that our popes in the Catholic Church, from Pope Pius XII up to Benedict, were fake.
The Protestants say so.
Yeah,
Okay.
not only Protestants.
Whatever, other people, other beliefs.
Yeah. Even Catholics says so.
Really?
They call it the sede vacante, Catholics,
Yeah, okay.
and so on. So many people have been writing that this pope or that pope is a fake pope, an anti-pope, and so on like that. And so the first step is to find out whether their reasoning is based on sound philosophy,
Yes.
whether it's logical. And most of them failed. They were illogical reasoning. They were not following the rules of proper reasoning. So after reading it, you just throw it aside. Completely disregard it. But when this article of Monsignor Bux, B-U-X, came out, it was well written. It was very logical, and it is in accordance to canon law. He proved it by means of documents, and it even goes against divine revelation. So we begin to wonder, he could be right. In other words, there is a doubt had been raised. What he said raised a doubt. Whether Pope Francis is really the Pope of the Catholic Church or not. It has been raised. And we cannot take that for granted.
What should the bishop do? I mean, the cardinals who elected the Pope.
Yeah, first let us answer, what should we do
Yes.
in a
Father.
situation like that? So our hearers and listeners who are the first and the most affected by this will know what to do because they are confused. Because it has been raised that probably Pope Francis is not the real Pope. Now, that can cause a lot of confusion.
Definitely, Father.
And so we have to resolve that question. We cannot just sit down and say, that's nothing, and therefore let's just go on with our lives. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
Because it is a matter of salvation. In other words, the answer to that question is a matter of the salvation of our souls, meaning to say, if he is the Pope, we have to continue obeying him and following him.
If he is the true Pope.
If he's a true Pope. And if he's not the true Pope, then we should completely disregard him and have nothing to do with him. So we have to resolve it. We cannot just sit down and say this is right and this is wrong. And if you ask how come, you say this is right and this is wrong. Well, because that's what I like. You cannot say that. You have to base it first on philosophy. Whether the reasoning that was applied in making those conclusions are right. And then we should base it on sacred theology.
Supposing theologians have different views about doctrines, how's that, Father?
Yeah, even if philosophers have different views, and in fact, so many people are trying to philosophize, no,
Yes.
then we have to check it our own because our salvation is based on our own personal reasoning and not on the reasoning of other philosophers.
True faith based on the real doctrine of the Catholic, which is based on Christ's teaching.
No, at the beginning, just philosophy.
I see.
Just philosophy. We're going to base it on the way we have learned how to philosophize.
But Father, ordinary lay person would not know how to philosophize. Probably they haven't studied the writings of
It's philosophers like
yes,
Aristotle,
Plato,
yeah,
Aristotle,
yeah.
and so on.
That's possible, but when I use the word philosophy, I always mean the science of philosophy. Science, no? But ordinary people know philosophy.
Okay, what you're saying, Father, is that everybody can reason out.
Yeah.
Has a mind to reason out.
It's called common sense.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Yes.
and everybody knows
Okay.
that. And we believe that exists.
Yes,
It
naman.
is natural reasoning, which is correct, and it's called common sense. It's common to all man, that's why it's called common sense. And Gilbert Chesterton is best known for this, being the father of common sense. That's something very good in human nature, common sense. It's
God-given?
It's a God-given thing, natural philosophy. So by common sense only you can know whether this person who's reasoning is reasoning properly. You can very easily. Common sense. And so when we analyze Monsignor Bach's reasoning, why he reached the conclusion that there is a doubt about the validity of the election of Pope Francis, it is in accordance to common sense. And it is even in accordance to philosophy, sound philosophy. But what he said is a theological statement.
Wow, Father, that's quite deep.
Yeah, so in other words, we cannot use philosophy. We cannot use common sense
Yes.
to judge what he said, whether it's right or wrong. We have to use theology. Because it is a theological statement.
Meaning,
Well, that it is a supernatural truth, a spiritual truth that he's mentioning, and therefore we cannot base it on natural truths or natural philosophy. We cannot.
if that is the case, the thought that the thinking should come from the cardinals who are well informed or learned people about theology.
Yes, and the cardinals, the bishops, and the priests are supposed to inform you, Brother Lodi.
Yes.
But eventually, God will judge you by yourself only. He will judge you not what the theologians told you or what the priest told you. He's going to judge you on the decision that you made, the act of mind, the act of logic that you made. It's a personal decision.
Sorry, Father, but we have only 1 minute. Please continue explaining so that we will understand.
Yeah. So with the statement of Monsignor Box, we cannot sit down under pain of mortal sin. We cannot just sit down and do nothing. And that's the reason why we are continuing this discussion, because we want to make the Catholics realize that this is something that they have to resolve, because the very salvation of their souls is based on this, at stake, yeah? Like in the 15th century, 1500s, a priest began preaching in Europe that the Catholic Church is supposed to be the church that he was preaching.
Yeah.
And half of Europe believe in him without checking.
Martin.
And his name is Martin Luther.
Oh, boy.
And they didn't check what he was saying.
That's the start of schism. The
Yeah, the separation.
Yeah,
Separation,
you lost Catholic.
But the problem is that half of Europe believed him, and half of Europe had bishops, cardinals, priests, theologians, all kinds of people and philosophers. How come they did not check what he was saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that's frightening. 5 million, no? We have that in our record, about 5 million Catholics. Or
Well,
much more. Maybe much more.
Church history doesn't tell us how much, but it's half of Europe, which is plenty of people, you know.
well, Father, we don't have much time. Maybe next episode, please continue explaining it.
Yeah.
And this program, these dialogues with Father Don de Castro, can be likened to a salt. Salt is preservation. We are trying to preserve the real doctrine of the Catholic faith and light of the world, this program, because once you understand the doctrine of the Catholic faith, salvation is certain. Thank you very much, my brothers, my sister. Please continue watching Dialogue with Father Don de Castro. Thank you.
Hosanna